Today I'm going to be making possibly my favorite video of the year where I predict the winner for the Goodreads Choice Awards for the mystery thriller category for 2024. I've been making this video for several years now and I just find it so fun to do. I am a lover of numbers and also a lover of words, obviously. So I like to combine those two loves and put my brain to the test to see if I can try to predict what will make it in the top 20, top 10, and the #1 winner for the mystery thriller category. Last year I also did the horror category, but this year I'm just going to be focusing on mystery thriller because I don't feel like I've been as in touch with the horror books that have been coming out this year. So I just wanted to put all my energy towards giving my best guess at the mystery thriller category. How I do this is I compile a spreadsheet full of mystery thrillers that have come out this year, and then I pile a lot of information in the spreadsheet about the books so I can try to make my most informed decision. This year I've collected data for over 100 books, so I've got a big batch to look at, and there's no real way to know the science behind the Goodreads Choice Awards. They give some information so you know what the rules are for eligibility, such as when the publication date has to be for a book and the average rating that the book has to have. We don't necessarily know what any of those rules are for 2024, but they follow similar rules throughout the years, so we can kind of assume that books that will be eligible this year are books that were published around late November of last year to early November of this year. The top 20 will probably come out around mid to late November, and then the awards will run for several weeks. And usually for a book to be eligible, it has to have a 3.50 average rating or higher. There has also usually been a note that an author can have multiple books nominated within the same category. So far, I don't believe we've seen that be capped out at any point. But when we're talking mystery thrillers, we're going to be talking about Freida McFadden. She has a lot of books that came out this year. I don't know how that's going to play into the awards this year and if that will somehow start to affect the rules of eligibility and if they'll get to a certain place where they have to be like, look, you can only have so many books in a category because it's getting kind of ridiculous. So those are all the known factors I have to go off of, and now I'll walk you through my spreadsheet. So I pull in the title of the book. If the book is in a series, I note what number in the series the book is. We have the author name, the publication date. I include a link to Goodreads just because of how some formulas work in this spreadsheet to pull in some numbers. So all of the average rating, number of reviews, number of ratings, that is all pulling off of Goodreads automatically, and then I just have it as up to date as of the day that I'm filming this video. So these numbers are going to change by the time that you see the video. Average ratings could fluctuate a bit, number of ratings, number of reviews is going to fluctuate a bit, but you have to call it at some point. I'm calling it now. I've pulled in my rating this year. This is just the rating I've given the books. It's an NR if I have not read the book, and there is a DNF if I DNF'd the book. I thought this would just be interesting to compare my average rating and what books I have at the top of the list versus what ends up at the top of the list. And then I like to try to figure out if the books have been part of some popular book club of the year. There's a couple common big ones that are out there, and typically you'll see those big books from these services end up in the awards. So the ones I track include Book of the Month Club, Reese Witherspoon Book Club, the Good Morning America Book Club, and the Jenna Reads Book Club. I just conflate those things. And then Aardvark is something new that I added this year now that that service seems to be getting a bit more traction. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have, but I wanted to include it anyways. And then that calculates how many bonus points the book gets. It gets 1 point for each of these categories, and that's just kind of for my visual reference of how popular the book might have been. Then for the stats, we have average rating, number of ratings, number of reviews, and then I pull in the number of days since the publication so I can create an average number of reviews per pub date, just for a way to kind of gauge for books that have been published later in the year, closer to where we are now. How does that number of ratings compare to a book that's been out since January, for example? So I just take an average just as a sort of gut check for how popular a book is right now and what the popularity might look like. Then at the end, I've got check boxes here for the top 20 and the top 10. Those I will be completing as we make our guesses. So let's jump into it. The fun thing about this is I prepare this spreadsheet all year long, and then I get to this point, and while I've been looking at this and these books and these numbers, I haven't really been like looking at it. You know, I haven't sorted it. I haven't put any thought to what I think it's going to be. So this is as much a surprise for me at this point still as it is for you. I don't know what's going to end up being at the top of the list, and I'm just going to start with what feels right. So we're going to start with getting rid of anything that is not eligible because of the average rating. I'm assuming they're going to stick to that 3.5 threshold this year. This automatically disqualifies these 18 books that have an average rating below a 3.5. Out of this list, none of these are particularly surprising to me. Maybe The Unwedding, because I think that was a Reese Witherspoon book club pick and that has a pretty low average rating, but I personally haven't read that one, so I don't know about that. Out of the books that I've read, my favorites were The Fury and The Sleepwalkers. The Sleepwalkers is not a very popular book. That's by Scarlett Thomas. It came out in April. The Fury by Alex Michaelides is a well-known book because he's a well-known author, and I had a good time with that book. I gave it a 4-star. It was a book of the month club pick, but the average rating is really low. It does have a lot of ratings and reviews, but it's going to be disqualified because the average rating is too low. So I'm going to hide all of these books so we only see what we know is in range. Now I'm going to take a look sorted by average rating, and we can see lots of green, which means we have a lot of popular books up here. This one is sticking out the most, and that is First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This book came out in January, and the second this book came out, I was like, that might win the Goodreads Choice Awards this year. So this has been on my radar all year. I did not like it. I gave it a 2, but it was a book of the month club pick and a Reese pick. It has an average rating of 4.03 and nearly 500,000 ratings, over 40,000 reviews. This is going to be a very popular one, and I feel confident it will be in the top 20 and the top 10. You'll also notice there's some books in here that I have other genres written beside them. Like The Tainted Cup could fall in the mystery category, but I think it's probably going to fall in the fantasy category. So those aren't going to be my first picks when they end up at the top of the list. I'm going to try to not pick those, but I do have it in my mind that there's a possibility that they get pulled in. A book that I feel pretty confident on is All the Colors of the Dark. This is by Chris Whitaker. It could fall in a different category, but I feel like it's gonna fall in this mystery thriller bucket. It could be in the historical fiction grouping, but I mostly hear people talking about it as a mystery thriller, and this little blurb even is calling it a thriller. This feels like one of those literary books that is going to end up in this category. We have a couple every year. It's been very popular. It was a Read with Jenna pick. It has a great average rating and a lot of readership. I feel like we can go ahead and say this is probably going to make it to at least the top 20. The God of the Woods is also standing out. I gave this book a 2.5. I did not love it, but the average rating is pretty high and it has high readership, and it's been very popular this year. I also feel pretty good about Listen for the Lie being in the top 20. That's been another really popular one. And then The Boyfriend is a new book from Frida McFadden. This one was published October 1st. So she had a lot of books this year. I have not read this one. I forgot to fill that out. It was included in Book of the Month. It has an average rating above a 4. It has a lot of ratings and a lot of reviews so far. And you can see how dark green this is, the average number of reviews per number of days since the pub date. This is fastly becoming popular. I feel like we should include that. Kill for Me, Kill for You also feels like a book that seems like it should be in the top 20. It was a Book of the Month club pick, and it's doing pretty well. I also really enjoyed that. I'm a little uncertain about how Stephen King's book is going to play out. This is an anthology that came out. It should go in the horror category, but we've seen Stephen King end up in the mystery thriller category and even win the mystery thriller category before. I'm hoping that it ends up in horror. For now, I'm not going to include it. Darling Girls is the other book that stands out to me in this view. This is by Sally Hepworth. I thought it was pretty okay, like most Sally Hepworth books are. Average rating above a 4, very popular. It was a Book of the Month Club book pick, and I feel like it's gonna make it into the top 20. I feel like it'll be helpful if I also mark what I think won't make it so that I can filter those out. So let's sort by the inverse, the lowest rated books, and so many of these just don't really stand out. I mean, we've got 79 books that we need to narrow down to a top 20, so I really feel like we can knock a lot of these out. The only ones I won't are the ones that have like a pretty dark shade here for number of ratings. So these are all of the books that I feel like just won't make it. This is 27 books that I just knocked out. That definitely helps us narrow things down a bit. In terms of which of these I actually liked, Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies by Catherine Mack was a 5-star for me, as was Swiped by L.M. Chilton. The average rating for these are very mid, and these books are not super popular, so I don't see them making it into the Goodreads Choice Awards, but I do feel like both of these will make it in my top 10 of the year, so more people should read them. They were good. Now let's take a look at what has the highest number of reviews. I like to look at reviews because people have to put effort in to write a review, more so than just marking a rating, so I feel like Goodreads probably weights that a little more heavily. That's at least what I would do if I was making an algorithm. So some of these we've already pulled into the top 20. The ones that stand out that we haven't: first, we have The Teacher by Frida McFadden. This has a slightly lower average rating, but it is immensely popular, and I feel like we're gonna see it in the top 20. We also have The Housemaid is Watching, which is another book from Frida McFadden. She was writing a lot this year. Again, a little lower rating, but wildly popular. For now, I'm just gonna mark that as top 20. We might end up removing one of these Frida books by the end. The Frozen River is not a book that I've read. I believe this is a more literary book, and it came out in December of last year, so it's eligible, but it was at the end of last year, and I don't know how often those actually get pulled in. The most common category is historical fiction, but it is described as a historical mystery, and historical mysteries have a tendency to make it into the category. We usually get at least 1 or 2 of those. So this feels like the type of book that could potentially make it in. It has a very high average rating and number of ratings and number of reviews. So for now, I'm gonna mark that as a top 20 contender. Then we have Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. I'm kind of surprised to see this be so popular, but I do think it was popular on TikTok, so that seems like something that might make it in. As far as other authors that stand out, Lucy Foley stands out to me. We'll take a look at that one. Also, Riley Sager. Also Nita Prose, because The Maid, I think it won the Goodreads Choice Awards 2 years ago, and this is the sequel to that book, so that seems like something that should maybe pop up again. Ruth Ware and Mary Kubica, those are potential authors we might see in here. Kate Alice Marshall. Stacey Willingham is usually in here. Megan Miranda, maybe. Those are the main ones standing out to me, so based on the numbers, who of that actually seems likely? So the mystery guest has pretty high number of ratings, so maybe that one. The Midnight Feast is not far behind. Neither of these have very high average ratings, and they're kind of mid in terms of number of ratings, so I feel like we can say goodbye to those. Daughter of Mine, that's the Megan Miranda. That doesn't feel very popular, but the average rating is a little bit higher, but there's a lot of stuff with higher average rating that has near similar number of ratings and number of reviews. So I don't feel like it's the strongest contender. And then Riley Sager, Mary Kubica, and Ruth Ware. I'm gonna mark all of these as potential. So now I have 17 books that I think will be in the top 20. Let's see what else stands out. I'm gonna get rid of low number of ratings, low number of reviews. The only one that stayed in here was the Karen Slaughter book, which has a very high average rating, but is not immensely popular. So maybe that one won't actually make it in the top 20. I'm gonna mark that as it won't make it, as well as anything that has a lower number of. Let's see what else is questionable for the genre. The Tainted Cup. With all the other options here, I don't see that making it. The Mysterious Case of the Alberton Angels, that was published in 2023 in September, so that will not qualify. Now we're down to 34 books. We have 17 that we think will be in the top 20. We need to narrow down quite a few more. And at this point, this is when I start going based on vibes. I'm gonna sort by average rating again, and we're gonna see what we missed. Okay, so this is the Stephen King. We're gonna hope that does not make it. The whole theme of this collection is it's very dark, so I feel like it should properly get categorized as horror, and we're gonna hope that Goodreads does that. We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. This book came out in September of this year. It does not have any bonus points. It has a very high average rating, and it's picking up steam relatively quickly with a good number of ratings and a good number of reviews based on the short time it's been out. Richard Osman books typically make it in the awards. It's usually been the Thursday Murder Club series. He did not have a new book in that series this year, but he did release this book. So I feel like we can count him in. And then Here One Moment, I don't even know what this is. Oh, it's the Leanne Moriarty book This came out in September of this year. I don't even know anything about this book. I have not looked into this book at all. Leanne Moriarty also writes books that are more like suspense dramas, but I feel like it could end up in this category. It's been getting popular relatively quickly and it has a good rating, so I'm gonna count that in. The Hunter is a book from Tana French. Came out in March of this year. Pretty good rating, pretty mid number of ratings, pretty low number of reviews. Also the second book in a series, and I just don't feel like she's as popular as she used to be. Maybe that's just my biased opinion, but I don't expect to see that in here. The Return of Ellie Black. This was a Book of the Month Club book. It has above a 4, pretty good number of ratings, pretty lowish number of reviews, and not very good steam in terms of picking up reviews as it's been out longer throughout the year. I like this book. I gave it a 4. I'm gonna mark it for now, but it's questionable. House of Glass, also questionable, lower rating, good number of ratings, low number of reviews. Hasn't been out as long, isn't getting reviews as quickly. It is by Sarah Pekkanen, and she typically writes with Greer Hendricks, and their books together, I feel like, kind of usually make it on. Maybe not always. I haven't heard much about this. I don't know about it. I don't feel like it's gonna be in the top 20. The Heiress is standing out because it has a high number of ratings. It also has a high number of reviews, so I'm gonna mark that one. And then out of the rest of these, nothing is necessarily screaming at me. I feel like I've mostly gotten everything I want to get. Oh, I think this was a sequel. I did not mark that in here. I think it's the second book in that series. I have not read it. Night Watching was a book that I thought was going to end up with better stats, but they're not very impressive. Like, this book felt popular at the time, but it doesn't look like a winner. Let's see how many that is. Oh, that's 20. Okay, let me just filter down to everything that's not in my top 20 that I haven't decided won't make it. And these are 12 other books for consideration. So one last chance to change my mind on any of these books. Are there any I want to swap in? Potentially House of Glass, but I don't feel really strong about it. Sequels, I don't feel super duper strong on, but I know this book was really popular, the first book in this series. The Last Mrs. Parrish, I haven't read that. And it has a high number of ratings. This looks like it's the highest number of ratings on this list. And then the highest number of reviews is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. And I don't feel like either of those are necessarily going to make it in. And so if I don't feel like those are really gonna make it in, it doesn't make me feel really strong about anything else. The only thing I'm kind of wondering about is maybe this book. So I'll mark that for consideration and we'll see what we maybe would swap in. Otherwise, I feel good saying goodbye to all of these books. Okay, so this is the list for the top 20 and I have to let one go. We've got 2 more literary books. Oh, 3 if you count The God of the Woods. So let's do some color coding. I would expect to see 2 to 3 literary books, so that feels correct. Let's find all the Frida McFadden books. So we have The Boyfriend, The Teacher, and The Housemaid is Watching. Frida also published a book that was called like The Housemaid's Secret, The Widow's Secret. I don't know, it was something satirical. So she had 4 books that came out, and I think she has another book coming out in November. But that other book, I did not end up pulling into the top 20, but these are 3 Frida options. Last year, there were 2 Frida options in the top 20, I believe. 3 feels so excessive. I'm like, will they really do that to us? I just don't know. When you look at the stats for all 3 of them, The Teacher and The Housemaid is Watching appear that they're doing better, but really The Boyfriend has the highest average rating and it's picking up steam relatively quickly based on the short amount of time it's been out. So I don't know what they're gonna do here. Like, I feel like The Teacher is gonna definitely be here. The other Housemaid books make it into the Goodreads Choice Awards. That's what history has shown. But The Boyfriend is doing really good. I don't know. I feel like if they're gonna cut anything, maybe they would cut The Boyfriend, but I also don't know if they're gonna cut anything or if they're gonna just let 3 of her books be here. Let's see, what other categories do we have? Let's do just like conventional, normal mystery thrillers. So I would say We Solve Murders is pretty normal. Kill for Me, Kill for You, Listen for the Lie, The Return of Ellie Black, Darling Girls, First Lie Wins, The Heiress, I don't know about The Heiress, The Next Mrs. Parrish, Home is Where the Bodies Are, The Mystery Guest, She's Not Sorry, Middle of the Night, One Perfect Couple, and The Midnight Feast. Those I would say are all just like normal, expect to see them here. Here One Moment feels like it falls more in this literary camp just based on the description. And The Heiress I feel like this read more like a drama or a suspense, but Rachel Hawkins typically gets lumped into like your normal mystery thrillers. So I'm just gonna keep her in this bucket, but you know, a little bit of nuance there. So it does feel like the majority should be these normal mystery thrillers. Then we get, you know, our Frida pickings and then our literary options. So if anything has to go, it would either be one Frida book or one of the literary books. Also, let's consider how many sequels we have. So we would have 1, 2, 3, which feels about right. There's usually like 2 to 3 or 4 books that are in a series. Out of these literary books, if one has to go, it's kind of hard to pick because they all have above a 4.0 average rating, which is really good compared to the rest of the list. They have over 100,000 ratings, except for the Liane Moriarty book, which is newer, but it's pacing really well. The lowest pacing one is The Frozen River. That one did come out last year, but I think it's still eligible. So it almost makes me wonder if I should remove one of these more conventional books. And if I look at what is pacing the worst, it would be The Return of Ellie Black, which is a 4.0. If I look at what has the lowest average rating, it would be The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley, but I feel like her popularity is going to get her in there. Another book that's pacing more slowly would be The Mystery Guest, but I don't know, that feels like it should be in there. And then we have Kill for Me, Kill for You, which also feels like it should be in there. Okay, I'm going to meditate on this for approximately 30 seconds, and then I will let you know which book I'm kicking off. Okay, I think I'm gonna go with The Return of Ellie Black just because it's pacing the slowest, and I don't know. Like I said, I liked that book, but it didn't feel very popular, so that's what we're removing. Okay, so these are the books I feel relatively sure will be in the top 20. This is my final submission. This is what I think it's going to look like. Now we can move on to making predictions for the top 10. The top 10 is informed by voting. So the top 20 come out, then people get to vote, and that is what informs the top 10. So at this point, I go more based on popularity and what I think people are going to vote for. So we're gonna sort by number of ratings because I feel like that most aligns with popularity. And then we're also going to take into consideration, the first thing we're gonna do is Frida McFadden. If she has 3 books, that means that people who just wanna vote for Frida will be split. They can only vote for 1 book, so which one are they gonna vote for? The one that has the highest average rating is The Boyfriend, but it's not the most popular. The most popular is The Teacher, and then The Housemaid is Watching. I'm pretty sure last year 2 Frida McFadden books still made it to the top 10, and I feel like The Teacher and The Housemaid is Watching will make it to the top 10. I also, from the very beginning, have said I think First Lie Wins is going to make it to the top 10, so I'm going to leave that on there. We're going to knock out The Boyfriend. Listen for the Lie, wildly popular this year. That feels like a top 10. The God of the Woods also feels like a top 10 to me. I feel like people might vote for Riley Sager just because they know Riley Sager. He's a pretty well-known author. You know what I need to do is I need to take number of ratings based on pub date because I only did that for reviews. So let's add that in. Okay, so that makes a couple things stand out. All the Colors of the Dark and The Midnight Feast, those feel like they could be top 10s. And then where did Riley Sager fall in this? Right around here, so not as high as I thought. Let's sort by this metric, and what do we miss? Here One Moment by Liane Moriarty. I cannot believe how high this keeps performing. I don't see this making it to the top 10, but the data doesn't lie. But it just doesn't make sense, but the data doesn't lie. And the top 10 always ends up with some books that I don't want to read, and that's a book I wouldn't really want to read. So if I go by that math, that makes sense. So that is 8 books, and then I would have 2 more that make it into the top 10. Home is Where the Bodies Are doesn't really feel popular enough to make it into the top 10. And for some reason, I do just feel like people are gonna vote for Riley Sager, so I'm gonna mark that one. And then, what else? Let's go by highest average rating. The Frozen River, it's coming up again, but I just don't know. We Solve Murders, Kill for Me, Kill for You. I feel like Kill for Me, Kill for You could be up there. I think that makes us 10. Yeah, that's 10. So does that feel like my top 10? So these would be the top 10, and these would be the ones that don't make it into the top 10. I do feel like having 3 more literary books feels wrong. I feel like only 2 are gonna make it to the top 10, and I can't get over this Liane Moriarty book. I'm just like, no, that's not my top 10. I know the math is there, but that just doesn't feel right. These are my options left to substitute for what I think will make it in. I'm not gonna pick The Frozen River. I'm not gonna pick The Heiress. I don't know about sequels. I don't know about the Geneva Rose book. I definitely don't think She's Not Sorry would make it to the top 10. potentially a Ruth Ware, potentially a Sally Hepworth, potentially a Richard Osman. I'm gonna go with Richard Osman. That feels right. Okay, so that's what I think is gonna make it into the top 10. This is my final, locking it in, final submission for the top 10. Now in terms of the winner, what I think is gonna win, I think it's gonna be a Frida McFadden book, unfortunately, and I fear it's gonna be The Teacher. I think First Lie Wins should be the winner in terms of what I've seen people loving throughout the year. I didn't love that book. I gave it a 2, but that feels like the book people loved this year. And The Teacher was terrible. I gave it a 1. It was so bad. Let's see what else I have ratings for. The Teacher I gave a 1. First Lie Wins I gave a 2. The Housemaid is Watching I gave a 2. Listen for the Lie I gave a 3. The God of the Woods I gave a 2.5. I haven't read this one. I gave The Midnight Feast a 3. Middle of the Night a 1. Kill for Me, Kill for You a 4. And We Solve Murders I have not read yet. Really, it's down to about these 4, maybe 5. These top 5 feel like what will be the top 5 that people are splitting the vote between, but I don't know. Just looking at the past years, Frida McFadden gets a lot of votes, and I know she's split in this moment, and that may screw her over, but I just feel like it won't, and I do kind of feel like The Teacher's gonna win. I feel like The Teacher's gonna win. I think that's gonna be the winner, and I think it's one of the worst books on this entire list of 100 books. But that's my submission, that's my prediction, that's what I think is gonna happen. If I go back and unfilter this completely, I am gonna take out the books that I have not read yet and the books that I DNF'd. But if you look at what I read, these are my actual favorite books of the year. These are how many made it above a 4-star. And only 2 of these ended up in the top 20 prediction, and only 1 of them ended up in the top 10 prediction. So if you want to know what mystery thrillers I think should be in the top 20 and the top 10, this is how the top 20 would look if it was based solely on what books I read and my ratings, which it's never going to be. I don't run the Goodreads Choice Awards, but you know, if I was just looking at my top 20, this would be my top 20. And if I had to pick a winner based off of this list so far of everything I've read this year, I would probably pick The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels, but that came out in September of 2023. So if we're really going by the Goodreads rules, this wouldn't be eligible. And then I think I'd probably have to pick Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies, or One Perfect Couple. And I'm not going to be forced to choose right now because I don't want to. And because at the end of the year, I do a video where I do a book bracket that ends up narrowing me down to my #1 book of the year. That's how I like to force myself to pick one. A bracket challenge is a fun way, and it'll be based on every book I read this year, not just mystery thrillers. So that video will be coming sometime in December, so you'll just have to wait to hear more of that. But I do think it is interesting to look at how wildly different the top 20 and the top 10 looks based off of someone who's an avid mystery thriller reader and what I find really enjoyable based off of what is the most popular and what I think is probably going to end up in there, just based on the metrics that Goodreads is collecting. We know this always happens. These books that end up on the Goodreads Choice Awards are usually not the best books of the year, but that's the situation we're in. That's what happens. And so that's what I think it's probably going to look like. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about my predictions. Let me know if there's anything that surprised you. Let me know if there's anything you feel like I got wildly wrong or missed off the list entirely. And I'll be back in somewhere between 6 to 8-ish weeks when the Goodreads Choice Awards is completely done and when the winners are announced, and I will be recording my reactions along the way as they are announced. So then we can take a look back together at how correct or how incorrect I was. But for now, that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!